Okay, so I kind of lied. I'm not done recording. That just was too long. It's not too long. It was just longer than I wanted it to be. So, um, welcome back. I look good as fuck too. I look pretty. I love my eyes. I think, are these almond eyes? Can y'all tell me if these are almond eyes? I don't know. I'd be wondering if I got almond. I think I have almond eyes, but like I don't know. And don't mind the right one. When I was like in middle school, my dad got me clippers for the first time. I decided to be really smart and fun and like take them to my eyelashes. And so this one is, I think, like stunted or like blunted, bunted, whatever they call it with eyelashes when they don't look right. So I probably should get like a lash lift at some point. But again, I need the money on. But like my left eye is pretty. Anyway, the reason that I am, I guess, still recording back so soon in the same set of clothes as the last video or my last story time. If you haven't watched it, go check it out. Why I bought a car that I did not want. Um, I'm gonna talk about the male sexual exploration. I've been meaning to talk about it. I made a video about it back in December. Never posted it because I was a pussy. I can't say that stuff on YouTube, can I? Because I was scaredy cat. Um, and so here it is. I probably should get my notes. Where are my notes? I don't know where my notes are at. So I'm not. We just gonna go off the top of the brain from what I remember. So this is going to be an astrological video. It is. I was gonna try to make it not astrological, but I'll just do this. I'll make sure not to really go too deep into it. I'm not about to go into like the aspects and the placements and the this and the that, but I will go into like rulership and like symbolism and like significance. So here's what it is. Basically, the reason I hypothesize, predict, see a male sexual exploration has to do with Neptune going into Aries. Long story short, Neptune rules Neptune rules like illusions and aesthetics, but it also rules sexuality. Neptune rules like abstract ideas, anything abstract, which is also concepts. So the concept of sexuality. This is why I say a male sexual exploration is so likely and will be seen and kind of felt within these next upcoming years. And I know, especially in the US, people would be hearing this and be like, girl, are you watching the news? Do you see what's going on? But the reason I say it is because, one, we're due for it. I just spit. We're due for it. I've seen a lot of like women and like people online talk about how like men need healing, especially like spiritualists talk about how men need healing, and I agree with that. I do. However, I think the healing, is going to come from like being able to explore like sexually. And I know you might be thinking, well, men already do that. Men already do that. Men and women really aren't able to explore their sexuality and or sexual stuff in general. They just really aren't, in my opinion. And we really got to see this like in the 2010s, like 2011 for sure. That's when Neptune went into Pisces. And that's when like a lot of like the current aesthetics and topics and things that you can like imagine kind of became popular. Like, for example, the whole like, I'm just a girl, I'm so helpless, blah, 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 blah. That is the most Piscean thing I could fucking think of. I'm sorry. Or the I don't know. I'm gonna think of them in the video. I'm sorry, but like a lot of the aesthetics and talking points, and not just girls, but also men use towards girls, comes from Neptune and Pisces, and that is because Neptune and Pisces is like in modern astrology the sign Neptune rules. Like Pisces and Neptune are like this, and so Neptune was basically able to do what it wants to do in the way that it wanted to, but and unlike, Neptune going into Aries, where we're going to see a lot more aesthetics. I don't want to say aesthetics, because aesthetics, in my opinion, is like very Piscean. But unlike Neptune and Aries, where we're going to see, the death of aesthetics and being aesthetically pleasing in favor of being more like raw and real and like, confident and genuine with oneself and authentic, right? Neptune in Pisces was like kind of strengthening and reinforcing like traditional values, especially because like it was making some aspects in conversation to Pluto and Capricorn was all about traditional. Like that's all it was. Um, and so during this time of like 2011 to about, I'll say, 2024, 2025, a lot of aesthetics came about, about being soft, about being ethereal, about being mystical, right? Those are all Piscean things, right? And even in the gay community, and mind you, I wasn't just out and about running around in 2011 as a gay person, but thinking about shows like Queer as Folk and other older shows that predate Neptune going into Pisces, I can definitely see how like this little transit has affected society as a large, which is, I don't want to, which is influenced definitely by Neptune. And for gay people, like bottoms and twinks. And so when I say bottoms, I mean like being hairless. For a very long time, in the gay community among gay men, being hairy was like a no-no. I don't know why. I don't know for what reason. I think it may have had to do with the that P word that has 4 letters. But for a lot of them, a lot of gay men, you, especially if you was a bottom, they wasn't looking your way unless you was Ken Doll smooth. And for someone like me, I don't know if you can see the hair. I'm not about to lift my legs or nothing, but I'm a hairy person. I shaved a couple days ago, but I'm a hairy person. I'm naturally hairy. I came out the womb hairy. I'm not doing all that. I'm not doing, if unless you are paying for my wax, going out and finding the best person to do it, getting me the spa treatment. I mean, like, you definitely going out your way to make sure I am treated, taken care of, and given quality service. I'm not shaving. I'm not about to do hair removal. But being hairless and being, a smooth bottom was a very prominent and big thing during this time frame. And in my opinion, I think it might have already been a thing or already been fairly like prominent already, but it definitely was reinforced by which it became a standard and not like just a preference. The next thing that we can all kind of talk about is twinks. I watched Queer as Folk as a kid. Twinks were not that like, they've always had like popularity and significance in a sense, but they were never like, again, a standard in the same way that they kind of are now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there are so many gay men that will like kind of shit on other gay men for not being a twink, especially if we think about like 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. Baby, everybody named Mama was trying to be a twink. And even now, like when I think about the whole idea of like a twink and all that sort of stuff, first of all, I don't like the word, because when I think of twink, I think of smooth, skinny, and white. I'm not one of the people that be like an Asian twink, a black twink, a Latino twink. If you a twink, you was white. I'm sorry. You might not like that. You might think I'm being rude or being mean, but like that's just how, like, again, queer as folk, like that, what the fucking word meant. But like even now, like twinks, like, twink death being a thing. I ain't never heard nobody talk about no damn twink death in 2016, 2015. And that's when I was like a baby gay. I just came out. You know what I mean? I was just learning and watching and getting used to and trying to find and understand and all that type of stuff. That was before I even got like a grinder or learned what the apps were. That's just me watching Glee and shit. Twinks were a big thing. Like, twinks were the thing. And I'm sorry, but there's no way for me to not say that like twinks are not, I don't want to say they're, the idea of what a twink is not having some association with Neptune being in Pisces. I'm just not going to sit up here and act like that's not the case. As well as the fact, if we think about like women during this time, a lot of women went through their own kind of sexual exploration, right? Like shows like Faking It, Awkwardness were really prominent and popular at the start of the 2010 decade, like 2011, 2013, 2012. Like, I remember watching Faking It and being like, oh wow, this show is really cool, before they canceled it. And a lot of those shows talked about and showcased and depicted women being intimate with one another and romantic with one another in a way that we really didn't get to see like 10 years prior, outside of shows like The L Word. And now I'm not saying they're like the best for lesbian representation or anything of that nature, but I do definitely think that those shows existing kind of go into how women have this sexual exploration, because I mean, when in the 20 cents in the early 2000s, that's not something we would have really saw on like MTV. You know what I mean? If we saw a show like that, it would have maybe been like one season on HBO or Showtime, and that's it. But it became a lot more common. I won't say normal, but common to see women intimate with one another in that way. We also see and have a lot more shows where women are being like directly sexual with not necessarily with one another, but in general, or voicing their desire for sex. And I remember like watching or at least listening to the Sex and the City as a kid, and how many of those conversations, and it's not all conversations, but how many of their conversations revolved around women wanting sex and women wanting to have sex and wanting to engage with sex. And I do think Sex and the City had some influence in that as well, but I can definitely see just like regular ABC shows literally showing women desiring sex and like going to their man and being like, I want to get plowed. Plow me. Like, you know what I mean? I want it just as much as you do. And I remember, 2013, 2014, 2015, like that being a very common thing that women talked about. And then, for example, shows like Scandal, shows like How to Get Away with Murder. Maybe not How to Get Away with Murder, but Scandal for sure. And I get like that's not what the nature of the show was about, but like Olivia was never coy or shy about what's his name? I don't know his name, but I know his name was Grant. She was never shy about that. Never. It was very direct and open, and he knew, right? Another thing that I think about during this time is that women also challenged like beauty standards and gender norms. I remember during that decade is when like the hairy movement for like women came about, where I don't know if it was a year or 2 years, but for a good little minute, women were like, yeah, I'm not shaving. I don't feel like shaving. I don't need to shave. Like, I'm not getting my wax. Like, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? And they allow themselves to either grow out their hair on their legs or arms or wherever else, or, go multiple months without like a trim or a cut or a wax, by which it was there. And I do think, I'm not going to say it did the most or whatever, but it definitely did showcase how women were basically exploring sex and what it meant to be sexy and all that it entailed, to be I don't want to say a sexually active woman, but a woman that wants sex and likes it and can, talk about it. Even think about like the stereotype, I guess, or the image people have in their head whenever they think of like, a bisexual woman, blue hair, like, or not even a bisexual, not even a bisexual woman. When they think about a bisexual, a lot of people are thinking about like a girl or a woman. Like they're not thinking about like a man, right? And so, during this time, we saw and got to kind of see women explore themselves sexually, both in terms of queerness and sexuality, and also like what they desire, what they want, how they voice it, how they go about it. And I'm not saying that like men are going to go through the same way. I do think from like a sexuality standpoint, it's going to be somewhat similar, but I don't think like, oh, men are going to be voicing about how much they want sex. I think with men, it's going to be more so about celibacy and realizing and knowing when not to have sex. Like with women, it's more so about being more vocal, more open, more direct about it. You know what I mean? Being able to say like, this is what I want and I'm not going to be ashamed about it. Whereas like men, I think is more so about like not succumbing to like the pressure or influence of like other men. And I've realized that like a lot of men police the actions of other males and other men, which is gay as shit, which, you know what I mean? Which is weird. Like a lot of men will encourage cheating on their partners, or will encourage like their bros to like just go out and be like a horn dog, right? And is it every man? No, but it is enough. It is enough. And I think for men, it's going to be more so about learning when to have sex, when to, go about those things, when to like definitely moderation, celibacy. Like those are definitely going to be like, if we're talking about like a straight heterosexual man that's like single in his early 20s, 30s, whatever, definitely learning about like, do I really want sex, or do I want intimacy? And what does intimacy look like for me? As well as the fact that I think men will also go through a similar thing with women in terms of being more direct and honest about what they want or expect from sex. I think we definitely will see a lot more straight men talk about how they just want to do oral, how they just want to be a side, than actually having to go through, penetration. And I don't mean like, oh, they just want to sit there and the women do everything. I mean like both, like give and receive that, or like, they want to go about it in a different way than just like traditional, like, oh, I probably can't do that. Ooh, ooh. Than traditional just clapping. Um and from a more sexuality standpoint, what I see happening, I see a lot more men being open and honest with their attraction towards femininity and not just women. And so, I mean, if you've been on TikTok or maybe even Twitter or hung around enough college aged men, you've probably heard or like witnessed the femboy jokes. And, in what, 2022, when they first started coming around, I guess they were a little funny. I listen. I'm not gonna hate on them, but I don't find the humor in femboys for them to be a joke, and these jokes have continued. Oh, spirit from the future. Um, got interrupted, have continued to be interrupted. At this point, I'm probably gonna start filming at night, so that way I know I can't be interrupted because everyone is fucking asleep. So basically, femboys, they're just not a joke to me. There's nothing about femboys as a community or as like individuals that I find like funny, but I do understand that jokes are made with truth. So I do think a lot of the men that are making these femboy jokes would end up, I don't want to say end up with, but would definitely be with a femboy in some way, to some degree, at some point in life. And given, I should stop touching my face, but given what Neptune and Aries is kind of like bringing on when it comes to being raw and authentic and more so like real, and I guess you could say genuine with oneself as an individual versus adhering to like a larger overarching, I guess, idea or way of being about society, like trying to fit in a specific aesthetic. I wouldn't be surprised if we see in 10 years, maybe even 5, that femboys are like courted by men that appear straight or move within the heteronormative world, straight world. I shouldn't say heteronormative. A lot of people don't know what that is. Anyway, but yeah, that's exactly what I see. I'm not saying that they're going to be wives and they're going to be like loved and like a new thing in society and they're just going to be propped up to this nature. No, I don't think that. I think we're like, from a societal aspect, it's going to be a lot of pushback. It's going to be a lot of like, whoa, 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 whoa. We're going to see people become and be homophobic and like anti-LGBT, anti-gay, anti-trans in ways that like we would not have seen, you know what I mean, in the past. And it's simply because, to a certain degree, the men that like a lot of people, both women and other men, thought like were straight or wouldn't do this or whatever, ends up, defying those odds. And it's not something where it's like it's going to be like a very over sexualized thing or nature or aspect, because I feel like at the core of this exploration for men, it's about like celibacy and learning healthier boundaries, healthier ways of going through sex, healthier, more productive ways of just being a sexual being or being a sexual man, being a sexual male, versus with women, which was more so about voicing their desire for it, talking about how much they like it, how much they need certain things present in sex. Like, women for a very long time before like the 2010s really weren't able to say like, oh, I'm not being pleased or I'm not being pleasured, without like damn near being called a bunch of names, or like their man wanting to play victim and be like, woe is me. Whereas like now it's not as common for men to act like that, or wives or whatever else to be seen in such like, I guess, nasty ways for voicing what they want from their partner, or what they feel good with, get pleasure from during sex. Whereas like men, for a historical standpoint, traditional standpoint, have always kind of had sex at their disposal through force, through the ways in which society kind of like make it up and allow men to do whatever they want. Like some societies allowing men to have, you know, 3 wives. And I mean, I know what you're saying. Like, it's not about sex. Da 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 da. If a motive for having more than one wife isn't sex, like that's not a motive at all, then I'm completely wrong and I don't know nothing. But for a lot of the men, and regardless of religion, because that's, you know what I mean. I'm not even going to name the religion, but there's more than just the religion you thinking of that does 3 wives. You know what I mean, and or just people that live in that type of lifestyle. I'm not saying sex is the main component, but it's definitely a top 5 reason. You're not gonna tell me it's not. Like, if that's the case, then I mean, so many of them wouldn't feel entitled to it. They wouldn't feel as if it's like a right. And you might be like, oh, well, it's what they say in the religious text. I mean, there are men that don't practice and believe in God that go into the whole like um, biology, go into being the biology of being a man, and men needing this and men having to have this and men, you know what I mean, needing to explore and roam and all this lovey-dovey primal freaking caveman shit, while if a woman wants the same damn thing, she's a whore. You know what I mean? Better yet, the woman should only want to be with that one man, but yet you got 2 other girls. Yeah, and it's not about sex. Okay. Um, but yeah, for men, it's about learning like celibacy, learning how to be healthier in sex, learning how to be more authentic within sex, right? Like, let's just keep it a buck. I do feel like there are a lot of men around who probably don't really like penetration, and I mean straight men too, who don't like penetration. Like, it's fun, or like they get their rocks off from it to a certain degree, but I mean, I know men have had conversations about like the pressure to perform. I am trying not to show y'all my hair. The pressure to perform, as well as, you know what I mean, how much like work or like energy is spent in penetration compared to like foreplay. Which, well, let's just give it a buck. There's a lot more energy spent in penetrative sex than there is in foreplay, because let's just for even if we're doing it like both parties doing fellatio, it's just a bunch of, I'm not gonna get into it, but ice cream, right? That's all it is. Like, it's not that hard. Ice cream and popsicles. Versus like doing a whole bunch of different movements, moving another person, picking them up, you know, making sure you angle things in the correct way. Like, it's a lot of work. I'm not going to act like it's not a lot of work. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of men that wouldn't want to engage in that type of sex, I guess, like commonly, like every day, regularly. They'd rather be aside. That's not something that like I'm shocked by. As well as the fact that there are a lot of men that have, I guess, certain desires and interests and whatnot that society wouldn't deem like manly, or like meant for a man, or like, you know, if you find it attractive or you do like it, you're less of a man to whatever degree. So it's about being an individual, it's about being authentic, and it's also about learning when to not accept sex, honestly, in my opinion. And I feel like, let's just keep it a buck, that's a really big thing. It's like a really big thing. I do think we'll see a lot more men talk about celibacy in a way that isn't like no fap, no da 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 da. Because let's just keep it a buck. No fap is about like celibacy and being celibate, but the way in which it is like structured and like typically like advertised, marketed to people, is in such a dude broy way. And I don't mean it in I don't mean it like negatively when I say dude broy, but I mean it in a sense by which it just becomes, it's like it it's like a counter culture form of like hyper masculinity to me, if that makes sense. Like if everyone that's trying to like showcase their like hyper masculine, you know what I mean, is trying to get chicks and be, you know, under as many people as possible or whatever, then like I feel like nofap is the same thing, especially the way in which it is done. Just like an opposite side of the coin. That's it. I'm not saying that nofap is bad or it's negative. It's just the way in which it is like constructed is like, whoa, for a lot of people, and not even just myself, but just for a lot of people, where it's just like, you know. I think we'll also see a lot more straight men be more open and honest and earnest about their friendships and like I don't want to say relationships, but their connections with gay people and gay men specifically. I do think we'll see a lot more straight men talk about um being either an ally to gay people, and I mean like genuinely, not just like for clicks and views, being an ally to gay people, gay men, being friends with gay men and gay people. And I mean like like podcast bros, all 4, 5, 6 dudes sitting in a chair and one of them being open and honest and real. 100%. And it's just because to a certain degree, and this is just something that I've had people say to straight men say to me, is that I don't want to say they find it easier to talk to a gay man, but there's a certain level of depth that a straight man is able to receive from a gay man, or even like a bisexual man to a certain degree, that isn't really felt or seen or experienced amongst a group of straight men. And I'm not saying that straight male men and friendships don't have any depth or anything of that nature, but what I am trying to convey more so is that there's a certain amount of like emotional availability that is present within like gay and bisexual men that allows for straight men to, have a shoulder to cry on when it's not someone's funeral. You know what I mean? Their entire world is crashing, right? Like, it allows these men, these types of straight men, more straight men, to be emotional and to be more vulnerable in situations that aren't needlessly dire, right? Like, because one thing a lot of straight men like to say is that they're there for their friends and everything of that nature, but you know what I mean, they don't understand, or would look down at their friend for crying just because their girl cheated on them. It don't matter. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of men that think like that, regardless if he was with the girl for 10 years or 10 months. It wouldn't matter to a lot of them. You crying over a bitch? What you crying over a bitch for? Just get another one. We can go to the club tomorrow. That's like how a lot of straight men think. I'm not saying all, but a lot of them. And the thing that makes, I feel like, it's so damning is the crab in the barrel like mentality that men have. And I saw a TikTok about it. If I can find it, I'll try to include it with this clip. But basically, it was, I think I don't know, he was like in his early 20s at the gym, and I guess he was reading like a manga or like a comic book in a sauna, or in the sauna, and some old guy was trying to police him and be like, that's not what men do, and mature males and things of this nature. And it kind of just, I mean, to finish the story, he defends himself and is just like, what's wrong with having some fun? I like comic books. I liked comic books as a kid. I'm gonna like comic books now. If I have kids, I'm gonna like comic books. What's wrong with liking comic books? Me becoming a man or me getting older doesn't mean that I have to stop reading comic books. You know what I mean? And I do think that either it is a mindset and belief of like older generations, or more specifically older men. And to a certain degree, I do feel like it's more of a thing with older men, because I feel like there are a lot of older women who are still willing and able and wanting to like do some of the things they did when they were young, or be in the same things that they were, when they were young. But like when it comes to men, it's like especially like from a traditional historical standpoint, they like hit a certain age and like now, fun has to stop. Or if they are having fun, it's literally only being inebriated and having sex. Like, and it's this need that males have, or men have, especially those that like, I guess, don't feel good about themselves, to police what other men are doing. That like, it's irritating to me, because I even made this like connection on my own a while ago, because a lot of people would say like, oh, men don't police other men, but it's like, think about it like this. Before interracial dating was a thing, loving v Virginia was a thing, think about how many, even though it might have been sparing, think about how many white men, individual white men, may have found an Asian woman, a Hispanic woman, a black woman attractive, want to romance her, want to date her, want to marry her, want to get with her, only to be talked out by it or because of it by a friend group. And those that still have the courage and bravery, you know what I mean, to go against what their community wasn't going against or wasn't accepting, then had to face violence. Right? And like that was what, the 50s, 60s, somewhere in the like 70s era, right? Now let's go into like the 90s, 2000s. Now, you know what I mean, men can't even like be gay. Like they can't even like just, or be bi, right? Like they can't have any sort of, you know what I mean, like their friend is going to try to talk them out. I'm not even just being bi, having that attraction, but also like doing anything that may be perceived as gay and or as bi. That's why for so long, like up until probably about like 2017, men had a reputation of being nasty, stinky, funky, dirty. And instead of being like, damn, that's a bad like thing to carry, I want to fix that, they like reveled in it, patted themselves on the back. Well, at least I'm not gay. You say that like you say that like you're gonna be bent. Do you want to get bent? Because there's no reason for that to be like your train of thought about being gay unless you want to get bent. Sorry. But that's what it is. A lot of men feel like they need to police other men. And on top of that, a lot of men end up falling for like the policing and allowing themselves to be like, I guess, somewhat controlled or even manipulated by other men and what they think should and shouldn't be going on. And I do think and see, and more so I should say feel, that when we really get like into the nitty gritty of Neptune being in Aries and like this big overarching switch, that men in general are going to have a very big wake up call in ways in the way in which they engage in sex, the way in which they engage with other men, as well as the types of men they engage with, and what they want to do as an individual. And for a lot of men, that's going to be going in relationships and partnerships that would be unconventional from a societal standpoint, being more open and honest and vulnerable with themselves and those that are around them, and finding people they can be vulnerable with. And then lastly, it would be about being more open and honest with their attraction and what they like, what they don't like, what they do want, what they don't want, and not caring about what somebody else has to say about it. So yeah, this is just kind of like the stuff I can think about right now. Plus, I wasn't in the same headspace when I was recording that first clip. However, if you would like for me to go more into detail about this aspect, or at least, you know, the, I guess, transitional period we're kind of in from like an astrological standpoint, please feel free to let me know. Comment, like, subscribe. And yeah, thank you for listening, and I will be out with a new video shortly. I have a couple recorded. I do need to do some editing, which I don't like doing, but it will get done, and that's the important thing. So I hope everyone has, you know, a good day, and ciao, ciao.